The strange details of the 911 call that solved a 25-year missing person case. On June 1996, 25-year-old Stacy Smart went missing from her home in Wisconsin. Her car was found abandoned on the side of the road near some railway tracks, and the last person to see her alive reported that she had mentioned to them that she was going to meet up with an old friend named Steve. However, this Steve seemed to have vanished into thin air after he spoke with Stacy. The police did not have much to go off of here, and despite dozens of searches of the surrounding areas by police divers, cadaver dogs, and even airplanes, they were unable to locate the missing woman, and the case went cold. However, the story doesn't end there, because more than 2 decades later, a random 911 call would lead police right to where Stacy had been all along. Before we continue, please take a moment to like this video. It really helps our channel. Thanks. A cold case is defined as a criminal case that has remained unsolved for a period of at least 1 year. Usually, when a case goes cold, it means that the law enforcement agency working on the case has exhausted all of their leads, and they don't know where to turn next. But every now and then, just when all hope seems to be lost, a cold case will suddenly heat back up. Sometimes a new witness will come forward with new information, or perhaps somebody will confess to the crime in a letter. But in other cases, it's something completely out of left field that solves the mystery, such as a 911 call in 2018 that brought a close to the 22-year-old missing person's case of Stacy Smart. On April 2018, a 911 call came in reporting a deceased female laying inside of a garage in the town of Campbell. The caller stated that she had observed the body while she was walking her dog, and she believed the individual had been dead for quite some time based on the smell. The police officers who responded to the call entered the garage and were shocked to discover a skeleton wearing clothing very similar to what Stacy had been wearing the day that she disappeared. They also discovered personal belongings inside of the garage that had belonged to Stacy, including her purse, jewelry box, and car keys. At first, the police thought that they might have finally found the body of Stacy Smart, but they needed to get some DNA testing done first before they could confirm her identity. After comparing the DNA results, it was confirmed that the skeleton was in fact Stacy. How did she end up in this garage? Well, it turns out that the garage belonged to the house of a man named David Rademacher, and it was during the investigation into Stacy's disappearance that the police learned that he was one of the last people to see her alive. Back in 1996, he had told the police that he had met up with Stacy at her place of employment so they could hang out. But after this, his story got a little shaky. He claimed that after they finished work, he drove her around for a while and then dropped her off at her sister's house, which would have been a 45-minute drive. But he couldn't remember exactly what route he took to drop her off. Cell phone records later proved that he was lying about dropping her off at her sister's house, and the police grew suspicious that he had something to do with her disappearance. But without any evidence, they let him go. In the years since then, he had moved to Florida and married a woman named Wendy. But when the police searched his new house, they discovered a number of items that suggested that he had not been truthful with them, including a pair of Stacy's jeans, a leather jacket, and several pieces of mail addressed to Stacy. However, these were not enough to charge him, and the case once again went cold. Fast forward to 2018, when the discovery of Stacy's remains reignited the investigation. After being confronted with the evidence, David Radmacher confessed to the police that he had, in fact, killed Stacy, but he didn't offer up any information about where her body was. He was charged with second-degree intentional homicide and was sentenced to 25 years in prison, where he remains today. But the question still remained: where is her body? It wasn't until several months later that David's wife, Wendy, contacted the authorities and informed them that she knew what had happened to Stacy and that she had actually helped David hide the body when they were dating. He had confided in her that he had killed someone and buried her behind a house on County Road K at the time. Wendy assumed he was referring to a verbal argument that he had gotten into with a man that he worked with, so she never asked any further questions. But now she wanted to confess everything that she knew. Wendy led the police to the house on County Road K, and they began digging up the backyard. There, they uncovered a plastic bag containing several of Stacy's belongings, including the silver necklace that she had been wearing when she disappeared. They then took a number of samples from the area and sent them off to the lab. Although the bones that were found in the garage were too decomposed to determine a cause of death, the more recent discovery of her personal belongings allowed the medical examiner to confirm that she had been strangled. This provided enough evidence to charge David with first-degree intentional homicide, instead of the lesser charge of second-degree homicide. But why did Wendy help David cover up the murder? It turns out that she had been an accomplice in another homicide as well. In 1986, she was dating a man named Lyle, who was serving time in prison for armed robbery. But when she ended the relationship, he vowed revenge. One night, Lyle snuck into Wendy's apartment while she was sleeping and viciously murdered her roommate, Linda Sue, by stabbing her multiple times. Wendy called the police and claimed that she had been out at the bar when the murder occurred. But she was soon arrested after the police discovered blood from the crime scene on her shoes. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison for her role in the crime. While incarcerated, she formed a relationship with a man named Joseph, who was serving time for a drug offense. The couple exchanged letters and eventually became pen pals with David Raditz, who had also been incarcerated for his involvement in an armed robbery. The trio continued corresponding with each other long after they were released from prison, and they kept in touch with each other frequently. During this time, they developed a bizarre group dynamic. Wendy and Joseph were both extremely jealous of David and would constantly argue with each other over who was more deserving of his affection. So when David confessed to killing Stacy and asked Wendy to help him hide the body, she jumped at the opportunity to please him. After the police had finished searching the property on County Road K, they returned to David's house to search some more. This time, they brought in a cadaver dog, which quickly led them to a hidden compartment underneath a workbench in the garage. Inside of it, they found more of Stacy's belongings, including her pager, a comb, and a piece of paper with her name on it. Although they never found Stacy's body, the prosecution felt that they had enough evidence to charge David with murder. To this day, nobody knows what truly happened to Stacy's body. It's possible that David may have moved it after the fact, and that's why it was never recovered. Or perhaps he was telling the truth when he said he buried her behind the house on County Road K. Either way, justice was still served when he was sentenced to life in prison. Now you need to watch. 911 Calls Reveal How People Die. Or check out Most Evil 911 Calls Ever.